Have you ever looked at the scale, done everything you thought was right, and still felt like your fat loss was going nowhere? You ate less. You moved more. You tried to be consistent. You told yourself this time would be different, and then the scale went up. Or it stayed the same, or it moved for a few days, then suddenly stopped. That moment is frustrating because it can make you feel like your body is ignoring you. Like all the effort you are putting in is not working. Like maybe fat loss is broken for you. But most of the time, that is not what is happening at all. Most of the time, fat loss is not failing. It is just being hidden. Hidden by water, hidden by stress, hidden by tracking mistakes, hidden by things that make the scale look louder than the truth. And that is exactly why so many people give up too early. They think the scale is telling the full story, when in reality, it is only showing one small part of it. So in this video, I want to break down why fat loss stalls, even when you feel like you are doing everything right. Because once you understand what is actually happening, you stop panicking over every weigh-in. You stop thinking you are broken, and you start seeing progress the way it really works. Now, the first thing to understand is this. Fat loss does not always show up on the scale immediately. That surprises people because they expect the body to respond in a straight line. Eat less today, lose weight tomorrow. Eat clean for a few days, see the number drop. But the body does not work like that. The body is not a calculator sitting in the corner waiting to reward you every morning. It reacts to stress. It reacts to sleep. It reacts to sodium. It reacts to workouts. It reacts to hormones. It reacts to changes in food. It reacts to changes in routine, which means your body can be losing fat while the scale still looks stubborn. And that is where people get tricked. They see a number they do not like, and they instantly assume the plan is failing. But sometimes the plan is working, and the scale just has not caught up yet. One of the biggest reasons for that is water retention. This one confuses almost everyone at some point. Let us say you start eating better, you cut back on junk food, you work out more, you drink more water, maybe you even lower your calories. Then suddenly the scale jumps. That can feel backward, but it happens because the body sometimes holds on to extra water during changes. If you eat more salty food than usual, your body may retain water. If you start exercising harder, your muscles may hold water while they recover. If you change your carb intake, your body may store more or less water depending on what you ate. Even stress can make this worse. So the scale rises and you think, what happened? I was doing so well. But in many cases, nothing bad happened. The body is just holding water temporarily. That is why one weigh-in never tells the whole story. You need a trend. Not one day, not one morning, not one random number after a salty dinner or a poor night of sleep. A trend. And speaking of sleep, that brings us to another major reason. Fat loss stalls, stress, and poor recovery. A lot of people focus only on food, but forget that the body is not just reacting to calories. It is reacting to your whole life. If you are sleeping badly, your body can feel more inflamed, more tired, and more likely to hold water. If your stress is high, your appetite can become harder to control. If you are constantly rushed, mentally overloaded, or running on very little rest, your body often does not respond the way you want it to. And this is where things get unfair, because the effort can still be real. You can be trying hard and still not see the scale move the way you expected. That does not mean you are failing. It means the body is dealing with more than just food. Now, let us talk about another silent problem: hidden calories. This one has ruined more fat loss plans than most people realize. Because when people say, I am eating less, they usually mean they are eating less than before. But that is not always the same as being in a real calorie deficit. You may have reduced your meals, but still be getting extra calories from little things you do not even count. A little oil in the pan, a sauce here and there, a coffee drink with sugar, a snack while cooking, a few bites from someone else's plate, a weekend meal that was bigger than you thought. None of that feels dramatic in the moment. That is what makes it dangerous. Because these are not huge mistakes that scream for attention. They are small things that quietly add up. And when enough small things stack together, the deficit disappears. That is why some people feel like they are doing everything right, but the scale keeps refusing to cooperate. It is not always because they are eating too much on purpose. It is often because the numbers are not as accurate as they seem. And if you have ever tracked food loosely, guessed portions, or assumed that healthy food automatically means low calorie, you know how easy that can be. Another thing that matters here is inconsistency. Some people are very disciplined from Monday to Thursday, then completely loosen up on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Then they get confused when the scale does not move. But fat loss does not care how good you were for 4 days if the rest of the week keeps canceling out the deficit. That does not mean you need to be perfect. You do not. It just means consistency matters more than intensity. A lot more. Because fat loss is not built by one excellent day. It is built by repeatable days. Days you can actually keep going. Days that do not burn you out. Days that fit your real life. And that is important because a lot of people start with a plan that feels powerful but is impossible to sustain. They go too hard, too fast. They cut everything. They try to be perfect. Then they get tired, hungry, frustrated, and mentally drained. And after that, the plan falls apart. So the scale stalls again. Not because the method was magical, but because it was not sustainable. That is why a better approach is usually the one that feels almost boring, less dramatic, more steady. More boring plans often work better than exciting ones. That is not sexy, but it is true. Now, there is one more thing that can make people think fat loss is not working, even when it actually is. And that is paying attention to the wrong signal. The scale is useful, but it is not the full picture. Your clothes can fit differently before the number changes much. Your waist can look smaller before you see a dramatic drop. Your energy can improve before the mirror catches up. Your body can be changing in ways the scale does not show clearly. So if you only react to the number, you can miss the progress that is already happening. That is why people get discouraged too soon. They look for instant proof, but fat loss often works quietly in the background. And then, after enough time, the change finally shows up all at once. That is the part most people never see. They only see the finish line, not the weeks of invisible progress before it. So if your fat loss has been stalling, I want you to remember this. It may not mean your body is broken. It may not mean the plan is useless. It may not mean you need to starve harder or punish yourself more. It may simply mean the scale is being influenced by water, stress, hidden calories, and inconsistency. And once you understand that, you stop guessing. You start looking at the bigger picture. You stop reacting to every fluctuation, and you give your body enough time to actually show what is happening underneath. Because fat loss is not always obvious in the moment. Sometimes it is happening quietly. Sometimes it is masked. Sometimes it is slower than you hoped. But slow does not mean stopped. And one bad scale reading does not erase your progress. So the question now becomes, what do you actually do when fat loss feels like it has stopped? Because understanding the problem is one thing, but knowing how to respond without making it worse, that is where most people struggle. The first thing you need to do is stop reacting emotionally to single weigh-ins. One number does not mean anything by itself. You can do everything right and still see the scale go up the next day. You can also do everything wrong and still see the scale go down temporarily. That is why reacting too quickly leads to bad decisions. Cutting calories too hard. Adding too much exercise. Getting frustrated and giving up. Instead, you want to look at patterns. Give yourself enough time to see a trend. Because fat loss is not about what happens in one day. It is about what happens across many days. And once you start thinking in trends instead of moments, everything becomes clearer. Now, the second thing is tightening the areas that usually go unnoticed. Not everything needs to change, just the things that quietly make the biggest difference. Start with the extras, the oils you cook with, the sauces you pour, the drinks you sip throughout the day, the small snacks that feel harmless. You do not need to eliminate everything. You just need to become aware of how often they show up. Because awareness alone can fix a lot of problems. When you start noticing patterns, you naturally make better choices without forcing yourself into extremes. And that is important because extreme plans rarely last. The third thing is making your routine easier to repeat, not harder. If your current approach feels like a daily battle, it is only a matter of time before it breaks. So instead of asking, "How can I do more?" ask, "How can I make this simpler?" Maybe it means eating similar meals during the week so you do not have to think too much. Maybe it means walking more instead of forcing intense workouts every day. Maybe it means setting a realistic target instead of chasing perfection. Because the easier your plan is to follow, the more consistent you become. And consistency is where results come from, not bursts of motivation. Now let's talk about patience. This is the part nobody likes, but everyone needs. Fat loss takes time, not just a few days, not just one good week. Time. And during that time, there will be moments where it feels like nothing is happening. Moments where the scale does not move. Moments where progress feels invisible. That does not mean you are stuck. It often means your body is still adjusting. And this is where most people quit, right before things start to shift, because they expect fast, constant feedback. But real progress is uneven. It comes in waves. Sometimes nothing changes for a while. And then suddenly, everything does. If you quit during the quiet phase, you never reach that point. So patience is not just about waiting. It is about trusting the process long enough to see it work. Now, there is another mistake people make when fat loss feels slow. They try to fix everything at once. They change their diet completely. They double their workouts. They cut calories drastically. They try to be perfect overnight. And that usually backfires, because the more pressure you put on yourself, the harder it becomes to stay consistent. A better approach is to adjust one thing at a time. Small changes, clear changes, changes you can actually stick to. That way, you know what is working and what is not. And more importantly, you avoid overwhelming yourself. Because fat loss is not about doing everything perfectly. It is about doing enough, consistently. Now let's come back to something important. Your body is not against you. It is responding to what you give it. Sometimes the response is delayed. Sometimes it is masked. Sometimes it is slower than you expected. But it is still responding. And when you understand that, you stop fighting yourself. You stop thinking you need to punish your body into changing. Instead, you start working with it. You give it consistency. You give it time. You give it a plan it can actually follow. And over time, that starts to show. Maybe not instantly, maybe not dramatically at first, but gradually, and then, eventually, noticeably. That is how real fat loss works. Not in dramatic overnight transformations, but in steady, repeatable progress. So if you feel like your fat loss has stalled, take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Are you reacting to single weigh-ins? Are there small things adding extra calories without you noticing? Is your routine too intense to maintain? Are you giving your body enough time to respond? Because once you answer those questions honestly, the path forward becomes much clearer. And usually, it is not about doing more. It is about doing better. More awareness, more consistency, more patience, less panic, less guessing, less extremes. And when you shift into that mindset, everything changes. Because now, you are no longer chasing quick results. You are building something that actually lasts. And that is the difference between people who keep starting over and people who finally break through. So the next time the scale does not move the way you expect, do not assume the worst. Pause. Look at the full picture. And remind yourself that progress is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, sometimes it is hidden. But if you stay consistent long enough, it will show. And when it does, it will all make sense. Thanks for watching True Health Tales. If this helped you, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss the next truth.